Hello everyone, welcome back to Spinning Iris and a very long overdue book review from BookTube Spin Tag number 5. The first one of two. Two books were selected, and here's the first one, More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. Some classic sci-fi. Somewhere in the back of my mind I must have heard either about this novel or about this author, because I don't know why I initially bought this book. Because the cover itself is not very indicative of what the story is about, and it's well done, but it's not exactly appealing. But if I have to guess what sold me, it was probably the very vague description on the back that I found intriguing, and the fact that it was also an award winner. The International Fantasy Award, which is something I don't think is given anymore. More Than Human is a science fiction novel by Theodore Sturgeon. Published in 1953, it is a revision and expansion of his novella titled Baby is 3, which happens to be part 2 of the novel. And it's fairly easy to see why it is so good and how the story sort of evolved around this one moment, because it is the most cohesive, even though it sort of jumps between the present and the past in an interesting way. I went into this story knowing only what the description on the back was telling me, and what little information was sort of on that first page describing the characters. And once finishing, it is both very little description and more than you realize. Somewhere in this world, there are 6 people who together can do anything. Someday, perhaps tomorrow, they will put their power to work and the world will be transformed. In the meantime, they are waiting quietly. They look and often behave like people you know, but with a difference. They think of themselves as I, not we, because in a curious way they are one. That is the source of their strength. This is the story of how they met and what they became, and what they intend to do. In part 1, titled The Fabulous Idiot, we meet all of the main characters and are acquainted with their special abilities. First off is a young man named Lone, who is the titular idiot of this section. He can make people do whatever he wants them to do with the power of his mind. The way he's written, he seems almost like, I guess if I had to classify him, he sounds as though he's on the autism spectrum. We also meet 8-year-old Janie, who can read minds as well as move things with her mind. And she comes off as a little genius as well. We meet twins Bonnie and Beanie. Very younger, they're toddlers when we meet them. They don't speak aside from ho-ho and he-he. I guess it's twin speak. They never really learn how to speak properly. But their special ability, they can teleport anywhere at will. And they always leave their clothes behind. And then there is Baby, a child that never got a name. Is the infant son of the Prods, who were a couple who took care of Lone after an incident at the beginning. In the book, Baby is described as mongoloid, but what we now know as Down syndrome. And Baby is very special. Baby has the mind of a supercomputer. And then there is Jerry, who's not unlike Lone. He's orphaned, he's wandering around the streets. He's not like Lone. He doesn't have that idiot label. He's more of a street rat. He has those street smarts and a little more knowledge of the world and people. And he slowly grows into his abilities, is the making people do what he wants. And it gets a little interesting for Jerry a little later on. These are the initial characters that make up the idea behind this novel, a Gestalt being. Gestalt is a psychology term meaning an organized whole that is perceived as the sum of its parts. There are two other very important characters that we meet in this first section as well. That is Hip Barrow and Alicia Q. We meet Alicia soon after we meet Lone, and it is it's Lone's interaction with her family, her sister specifically, that becomes a catalyst for everything that follows in the novel. Hip is introduced very similar to Jerry. In fact, his introduction follows Jerry's. They're very similar, but they have different experiences growing up. Whereas Jerry was sort of left to his own devices and had to survive on his own. Hip had every advantage, a stable family life, and was able to go on for higher education. And all of that is recognized and reintroduced in Part 3. Part 1 is set up sort of like an intricate mosaic of characters and moments, sort of pieced side by side till they form this whole picture, until they all come together. And Lone is sort of the glue that holds all of them together once they are brought to this little cave that Lone built as their home. Part 2, Baby is 3, is about Jerry's connection to Lone, Janie, the twins, and Baby, and how he fits into this new organism. The kids, now grown up a little bit, are now living with Alicia. Their existence as a Gestalt being is threatened in a way when this happens, and by the end Jerry learns what he needed to know, as well as something that they as a collective need. And all this is discovered through an interesting hypnotic process that Jerry goes through when he goes to see a psychologist. And that leads to Part 3, a part that is titled Morality, which delves into how Hip Barrow fits into this new being as well. You can kind of guess by the title what his position is, but it also goes into how he is maneuvered into this new being as well. Not just his connection, but how he is brought into the collective. It's very interesting how it's all brought back to Part 1 in the Prod Farm, and ends with a make or break climax for this Gestalt being. I have to say, this was a really surprisingly good read. It's not your typical sci-fi. It deals with some psychological concepts and things that are literally more than human. It also has some surprisingly dark elements as well, especially considering how young the main characters start out. Some of them coming from Alicia Q's perspective and her side of the story, especially from her abusive upbringing. There's one point where she does try to get rid of Baby and attempts to segregate Bonnie and Beanie because they're black. Actually, I like how they're introduced, because they're described as just two little girls, toddlers. It's not until their, I'm not sure if it's a parent or guardian, appears to scold them, we get a clue. His dialogue is written in a very cliched manner, in a very cliched dialect. And then we know for sure when Janie's mother uses a disgusting expletive. But to Janie and Jerry and Baby and Lone, they are their sisters. And ultimately more than that. Altogether, they are one unit. I described this to one of my bookish friends as like a mosaic. Not just the concept of the core five coming together as one new being, but how the novel is written as well. The 3 sections are not broken up into chapters. Pieces of moments they experience separately or together, or what they remember, all painting this intricate picture, piecing together these little seams of this person that they're becoming, all in less than 200 pages. I do recommend More Than Human if you love sci-fi, or if you're curious about this particular psychological theory, and it will suck you in and take you in directions you may not expect. I'm so glad this was chosen for the spin tag. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would have taken me to actually read this. So if you haven't checked out More Than Human or Theodore Sturgeon, check this out. Give it a read. You won't be sorry. Thanks for watching. Take care. If you want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. Bye.